At 58, Daniel Carter stood in a house that looked perfect, but felt empty. Everything was in its place. The floors were spotless. The air was still. Yet something was missing. No laughter echoed through the halls. No footsteps crossed the floor. No one waited for him anymore. On a small table sat a framed photo. Turned face down, like a memory he couldn't bear to face. But it hadn't always been this way. There was a time when this house was alive. Warm. Messy. Real. A wife who stayed up just to hear his key in the door. A little boy who ran to him every evening. Eyes full of excitement. Back then, Daniel believed he was doing the right thing. Working harder. Staying later. Providing more. He thought there would always be time to come back, but somewhere along the way, time ran out, and when he finally looked up, everything that mattered was already gone. Back in the 90s, Daniel wasn't a bad man, he was just busy, working 12-hour days, chasing promotions, providing what he believed his family needed most, security. Just a few more years, he'd say, then I'll slow down. But a few years turned into decades. Birthdays were missed, anniversaries forgotten, dinner conversations replaced by silence. His wife, Linda, stopped asking him to come home early, and his son, Ethan, stopped waiting at the door. At first, Daniel noticed the changes, but only for a moment. A quiet house meant fewer distractions. A sleeping family meant he could leave earlier, come back later, and stay focused on what he thought mattered most. He convinced himself this was sacrifice. That one day, they would understand. Linda tried. In her own quiet ways. She'd leave dinner in the oven with a note. She'd suggest a weekend trip. She'd linger a little longer when he walked through the door, hoping he might stay. But Daniel was always half present, physically there, mentally somewhere else. Ethan learned faster. The drawings he once waited to show his dad were taped to the fridge without a word. School plays came and went with an empty seat in the audience. Over time, excitement turned into distance, and slowly, without arguments or explosions, the house began to change. Not all at once, but enough that one day, it no longer felt like a home. One night, Daniel came home past midnight. The house was dark. A note sat on the kitchen counter. I can't do this anymore. Just a quiet ending. Linda had taken Ethan and left. Daniel told himself it was temporary. She'll come back, he thought, but she didn't. At first, he treated it like a misunderstanding. A pause. Something that would fix itself once things settled down. He went to work the next morning like nothing had changed, convincing himself that giving it time was the right move. Days turned into weeks. The silence grew louder. The house, once full of small, ordinary sounds, now echoed with absence. No television humming in the background. No footsteps upstairs. No soft voice asking how his day had been. Daniel tried calling Linda. It went to voicemail. He left messages, short at first, then longer, more uncertain. He called Ethan too. But the conversations were brief, careful, like speaking to a stranger. I'm busy, Dad, Ethan would say, and Daniel, not knowing what else to do, would reply, okay, maybe next time. He told himself he just needed to work a little harder, fix a few more things, get everything in order before reaching out again. That when he finally showed up, with time, with stability, it would all make sense. But life doesn't wait for perfect timing, and without realizing it, Daniel wasn't just losing them, he was getting used to life without them. Years passed. Daniel got everything he worked for, the money, the respect, but his house never felt like home again. Phone calls with Ethan became shorter, then stopped. Holidays turned into just another workday, and slowly, success began to feel like silence. At the office, Daniel was admired. People listened when he spoke. Younger colleagues asked for his advice, calling him the man who made it. His calendar was always full, his phone constantly buzzing. On paper, He had built a life most people envied, but when the day ended, there was nowhere he needed to be, no one expecting him. He started staying later. Not because he had to, but because there was nothing waiting at home. The quiet had become familiar, comfortable, even like something he no longer questioned. Sometimes, late at night, he would walk past the spare bedroom, the one that used to be Ethan's. The door always closed, the light always off. He never went in. Linda's number still sat in his phone. He never deleted it, he just never called. Years ago, he told himself he was working for them. Now, there was no them, only him, and for the first time, Daniel began to understand something he had spent a lifetime avoiding. He hadn't lost his family all at once, he had lost them slowly, one ordinary day at a time. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from Ethan. After 15 years, Daniel's hands trembled as he opened it. "I'm getting married." That was it, just information. But at the bottom, one line stood out. "I don't expect anything, but you can come if you want." Daniel read it again. And again. 15 years. Reduced to a few sentences. No anger. No questions. No memories, just distance. He sat down slowly, the paper still in his hand, as if it might disappear if he let go. For a long time, he didn't move. The house was quiet, just like every other day, but now, it felt different. Heavier, an invitation. Or an obligation, he couldn't tell. Part of him wanted to believe this was a second chance. That maybe, somehow, this was Ethan reaching out. But another part knew better. This wasn't a door opening, it was a door, left slightly unlocked, and whether he walked through it or not, that was entirely up to him. That night, Daniel stood in front of his closet longer than he had in years. Rows of suits, perfectly pressed, ties he hadn't worn in months. He realized something strange. He didn't know what a father was supposed to wear to his son's wedding, because for so long, he hadn't been one, and now, he had to decide, show up, or stay away, like he always had. The wedding was held in a small garden. Daniel arrived early. He didn't know where to stand, or who to talk to, and then, he saw her, Linda, older now, softer, but still the same. For a moment, time collapsed. He walked over slowly. "Hi, Linda." She looked at him, and gave a small, polite smile. No anger, no tears, just distance. "You look well, Daniel." He nodded. "I'm sorry." The words came out heavier than he expected. "For everything." She paused, then said something he would never forget. "I waited for you. For years. I just wish you had come home sooner." Daniel felt the weight of those words settle deep in his chest. Not sharp, not loud, just heavy. The kind that doesn't leave. "I thought I had more time," he said quietly. "I thought I was doing the right thing." Linda looked at him for a long moment. Her expression calm but tired. "We all think that," she replied. "Until we don't." In the distance, soft music began to play. Guests started taking their seats. Laughter drifted through the air, light, effortless, unfamiliar. Daniel glanced around, feeling like a stranger in a life that should have been his. "Ethan? Does he?" He hesitated, unsure how to finish. Linda shook her head gently. "He's built his life, Daniel. Without you." The words weren't cruel, just true. Daniel nodded, swallowing hard. "I'm glad he invited you," she added after a moment. "That says more than you think." For the first time that day, Daniel allowed himself a small breath. During the ceremony, Daniel sat in the back row, watching his son smile, watching the life he missed. When the music played, Ethan walked past him without stopping, but just before reaching the altar, he hesitated, turned slightly, and gave the smallest nod. Not forgiveness, but not rejection either. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something shift. It wasn't a grand moment. No one else seemed to notice. The ceremony continued. The vows were spoken. And the guests smiled as if everything in the world was exactly as it should be, but for Daniel, that single nod meant more than words ever could. He sat a little straighter, listened more closely, for once. He wasn't thinking about the past, or trying to rewrite it. He was simply there, when the applause filled the garden. Daniel clapped along with everyone else. Not out of obligation, but because he was proud. Proud of the man his son had become. Even without him, at the reception, he kept his distance. Watching. Observing. Unsure of his place, then. Unexpectedly, Ethan approached. "Hey," he said. Brief but steady. Daniel stood up quickly. Almost awkwardly. "Hey. Son." The word felt unfamiliar. "I'm glad you came," Ethan said. No hug. No long conversation, but this time, Ethan didn't walk away immediately, and for Daniel, that was enough, because after years of silence, even a few seconds felt like a beginning. After the wedding, Daniel found Linda outside. "I don't expect us to start over," he said, "and I know I can't fix the past." Linda looked at him. Calm and steady. "We're not going back," she said, "but we don't have to stay strangers." It wasn't a happy ending, but it wasn't a tragic one either. For a moment, they stood there in the quiet. The distant sound of laughter fading behind them. The years between them hadn't disappeared, but they no longer felt impossible to cross. Daniel nodded slowly. "I don't deserve that. But I'd like to try." Linda gave a small, understanding smile. Not the kind that promised anything, just the kind that allowed space. "Then start small," she said. "That's something you never did before." He let out a soft breath. Almost a laugh. She was right. "I could call," he said. Sometimes is a good start." They didn't exchange long apologies or revisit every memory. There was no need. Some things didn't have to be said to be understood. Inside, the music grew louder as the celebration continued. A new chapter for their son had begun, one Daniel had almost missed entirely. "I'm glad you came today," Linda added. Daniel looked back at the lights. Then at her. "Me too," and for the first time in years, going home didn't feel like returning to nothing. It felt like beginning again. Daniel went home that night. Same house, same silence, but this time, he turned the photo frame back up, because he finally understood something. Success can build a life, but only presence can fill it. He stood there for a while, looking at the photo he had avoided for years. Linda, smiling softly. Ethan, small and full of life. And himself, standing beside them. But somehow already distant. For the first time, he didn't look away. He walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat down, not out of habit, but with intention. The quiet was still there, but it didn't feel as heavy. It felt honest. Daniel reached for his phone. He stared at Ethan's number. His thumb hovered for a moment, then he typed a simple message. "Hey. I'm glad I came today. I'd like to stay in touch. If that's okay." He read it twice. No pressure. No expectations, just presence. Then he hit send. He didn't know if Ethan would reply. He didn't know what came next. But for the first time in a long time, Daniel wasn't waiting for the perfect moment. He was showing up in a small one. And maybe, just maybe, that was how everything meaningful begins. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of someone you love, don't wait, go home early tonight. And if you believe in stories that matter, subscribe to Life Lessons Story, because sometimes, the lessons we need most, come a little too late.